Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jamie Xu, Field CTO at Cycode, and I'll be your host for this next session. I'm very excited about this session because it's 2025, and everybody talks about AI, right? AI is sprinkling in pretty much most of the conversations. But this session is going to be dedicated to AI. So if you think about AI, think AI is topic, this is the session for you. So the application security landscape is facing a significant inflection point, another inflection point. With explosion code, the ever-present pressure to ship faster, and chronic shortage security professionals, many are looking to AI as a potential game changer. But some sees AI as bringing risk and job security to the organization, right? There has been mixed opinions around how AI and Gen AI will shape AppSec. Will AI make my job obsolete, or are there bigger opportunities here? To delve into this fantastic and transformative future, I'm delighted to welcome Anshuman, AppSec tech lead at Lyft, and well-known DevOps and DevSecOps me, my ex-coworker, trainer, author, Marc Hornbeek, to the event. Anshuman and Marc, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, but before we dive in, I'd love you to introduce yourself to the audience. Anshuman, why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure thing. So, hi everybody, I'm Anshuman. I've been in the information security, cybersecurity space for about 15, 16 years now. Pretty much all of my career, I've been an AppSec practitioner. I've worked at big enterprises like Atlassian, Intuit, EMC. I've also worked in a few healthcare startups. And for the past 2.5 years or so, I'm the AppSec leader at Lyft. Um, I have been playing with AI and LLMs for the past 6 to 8 months or so. And yeah, I'm really excited about the future, and I'm excited about the conversations we're going to have here today.
Okay, I'm Marc Hornbeek. I'm famously known, I guess, as DevOps the Gray. I claim I've been doing DevOps for 50 years, believe it or not, long before it was called DevOps, which really just means I've been involved in automation of the whole life cycle aspects of things, and most recently become an enthusiast around AI and Gen AI in particular. I've been using extensively for 5 years, and the application of AI in the security space particularly interesting. Unfortunately, I've been involved in too many automation projects that displaced people, but I think there's an opportunity with AI to be an application of it that adds value and doesn't just displace people. So I'm really excited to be part of this, and particularly appreciate Jimmy, you being supportive of my new book and writing the foreword for that book. Looking forward to working with you guys at Black Hat as well.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, as you know, both have not only have a very optimistic have an outlook about AI, they both are practicing and literally dive in. Right, Anshuman very deep into AppSec, LLM, where Marc is automation, app security, DevOps. It's really, I think it's really a fantastic balanced view from both perspectives. So let's dive in. But let's get the most interesting question out of the way. What is the biggest myth you hear about AI in security, and how do you respond to it? Marc, why don't you go first?
Okay, so fundamentally, AI seems to be a solution for all problems. In reality, there's still a need for the human element, and so I just like when DevOps was introduced, everybody thought, "Oh, you don't need ops anymore because there's ops in the word." Well, that was never true. And certainly it's true that, you still need the human element involved, but AI definitely helps make some of the things more feasible and more effective.
Yeah, I think the biggest myth, obviously, I think you already spoke about it earlier, is that AI is going to replace our jobs. AI is going to replace human beings. I don't think that's true at all, at least not in the next decade or two. I think people or folks are generally skeptical about this because maybe they haven't played with AI or they haven't seen how AI can actually help scale themselves or make them more efficient. So I think that's a big myth. I still see people kind of being afraid of trying out new technologies, and I think there is a genuine need for folks to actually go and play with this stuff to have informed opinions.
Thank you. Well, to the audience, clearly both are very optimistic about AI, right? If your questions, doubts, and I will actually challenge both of the panelists in the future questions to see how to respond to the skepticism. So keep listening. You'll hopefully hear more about the aspect of how do we address the potential drawbacks. Okay, so what are the most unsustainable aspect of AppSec today? Driving the need for AI, since you both are pro AI. So, Anshuman, why don't you go first?
Yeah, for sure thing. So I think generally AppSec and product security teams are under resourced. Every company I've worked at, the ratio of a security engineer to a developer is out of whack. It's like 1 to, I don't know. And so I think coverage, visibility, quantifying the risk reduction. These are things that are generally very difficult to get to with a small team, right? Just because AppSec for the most part is a very manual intensive sort of a program, right? You do threat modeling, you do design reviews, code reviews. These are things that require humans' attention, humans' reasoning capabilities, so on and so forth, right? And a human being can only go so far. I can only do so many design reviews in a day. And what this means is, in this new era where AI generated code is going to increase significantly, I am still going to be the same. My mental bandwidth is going to increase at the same pace. So, what this eventually means is things are going to fall through the cracks because I just don't have the bandwidth to cover and sort of bring that visibility in. So I think these are areas that are going to be unsustainable, especially, with AI generated code and whatnot. And I think the approach of how to solve these problems need to be changed.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously it is it's a velocity and the scale, right? The firstly just have to leverage some extra help in order to scale keep up. And that topic actually aligned with what I turned to you, Marc, right? Because you and I, in the previous life, you were leading DevOps, I'm leading DevSecOps. And the early days is when you do manual work for AppSec was one of the reasons why, the shift left automation couldn't, scale. There's a problem. So what's your thought, Marc, around this topic?
Well, first of all, I would agree. I think the point that Anshuman made was probably the number one. It's just the the difference between available resources and needed resources is a lot. But I think part of that also is just the number of tools involved. If you take let's say a DevOps tool chain, and then even without security, but even when you add in security, you're often talking about 20 to 35 tools, right? By the time you've added in all the tools for security, and then on top of that, you've got security and operations and more tools. And if they're not consistent with each other, then developers and the users of these tools have to be familiar with way too many tools, and that's just not sustainable. I think that has given rise to the recent, interest in what's called platform engineering to try to make a common portal to all the tools and obfuscate the need for engineers to know all the different tools. But that's part of the answer. I think more capable tools in general is also part of the answer, and tying out together with AI is definitely going to be part of the answer. But the current situation is just adding more and more tools is not sustainable.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely right. Platform engineering is something I did that we don't talk enough about. I did personally think the right correlation platform engineering as another evolution and ties closely to applicant security and obviously overall AI. All right, back to you, Anshuman. Since you're talking about the scale, there's so many, but I think you talked about previously, maybe your post or somewhere, and talk about infinite resources, right, with AI, and we talk about we don't have enough time to do everything, right? So, and you talk about you have been playing with LLM, so and AI agents. Elaborate on how experience dealer LLM AI agents could potentially change, alter AppSec.
Yeah. So when ChatGPT came about, I think this is back in 2022, I believe. I started playing with it, right? And I realized that, I was able to have ChatGPT generate code for me that otherwise would have taken me days, months. And this was a problem because, security engineers, like most of them, they don't have the traditional engineering background. I do. So even I had my undergraduate and master's degree in computer science. I've built software in the past, but security is a field that you don't generally write code on a daily basis, right? So you tend to lose touch of how to write software, how to build software. So when ChatGPT came about, I was able to do things at a pretty fast pace, and that's when I realized, right, like if I know exactly what I want to build and I know the process, and if I can write a good prompt explaining how to go about it, I can have these AI models build that for me, right? So that was the triggering point in me where I'm like, look, I have really struggled to build things in the past, and that's mostly because A, I don't understand the nuances of how software gets built, and then B, I just don't have the bandwidth to go and spend hours on something like this. But I do understand the problem. I do understand the potential like solutions as well. So if I'm able to synthesize all of this and give it as a prompt with the right context, maybe with a few examples, you can have AI models build things for you really quick. And this is way back in 2022. We are in 2025 now, and I've seen that models have improved so much, especially the models with reasoning capabilities. Like if you look at OpenAI, AI's model O1, O3, these models have reasoning capabilities that are actually that could be smarter than human beings, and they have all the worldly knowledge, right? So I think it's more about how do you leverage these capabilities of these models effectively, and how do you make sure bring in determinism. And the way you do that is by giving examples, by giving the right context, by having good prompt where you basically are try to reduce hallucinations as much as I can, because that's the biggest problem is the output from these models. They look like they know exactly what they're doing, confident, but that's not often the case. And I think that's where if you're an expert in a niche area, knowing what you want from these models, it becomes really important.
So I'm hearing that if you're hiring again for AppSec engineers, prompt engineering might be one of the job description items then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, prompt engineering is going to be a very important skill to have for any engineer, not just security engineers.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Mark, obviously, very excited about your new book. Obviously, it's about calling intelligent, continuous security. I'm not going to spoil the book, but in that book, you mentioned about going beyond traditional AppSec to prepare for an AI-driven future. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's all about, how capitalized is the I in intelligent, because, a couple of years ago, the tools were good, but they needed a lot of checking even at the micro flow level of work. And then they got a little more reliable, a little more confident in the output, and you didn't need to check quite as much. But you still need to do a lot of checking more at the macro flow level, where you got to produce a whole product or something. And it's the intelligence is going up, and now what I'm finding anyway is that you can trust AI to do a lot of strategic level work, right? Research, and even suggest programs of action, and trying to help strategize what a pipeline should include, and how to tie together production and the dev side of security. In the book, actually, I do talk about how you can transform from a current security posture to what I call a more integrated, intelligent, continuous security, where you've got more consistency, collaboration, and intelligence across the whole life cycle. So yeah, that's what it's all about. It's trying to build a real end-to-end capability that's truly taking advantage of AI, not only at the minutia of tasks, but all the way up to the strategic level. I'm beginning to worry that the roles for people like me are getting less and less. I know I've done a couple of projects a couple of years ago that took about a year to do the work. Not full time, but over the same work now, like 4 months max for the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to evolve. Thank you. I like also you mentioned, and more on that later, around, the carbon car gathering life cycle. I think allowing bring SecOps to the table and production. And I think talk about, you mentioned product security. We have a separate, set talking about deep into the role of product security getting broader, because product security is way broader than just AppSec. So we'll talk about that in a second. But all right, let's dive to the most interesting question. So if you are a naysayer on AI, this question is for you. Joe, skepticism around AI advancements, right? So with the time purposes, we'll just list out some specific, objections, right? Questions around AI for AppSec, right? You name it. Quality of AI generated code from your remediation, maturity of AI agents, the smoke and mirrors, or is MCP the end-all be-all solution? What's your take on this, Anshuman?
Yeah. Look, the current state of affairs is obviously, where these technologies are still evolving. Like there's no MCP authentication authorization is still something that people are debating. I think there's a spec now. So I think what is really important amongst all of these discussions is to not stifle the progress of some of these technologies just because it isn't matured yet. I think there are two ways to look up to consider this particular scenario, right? Is how optimistic are you really, right? Like in the kind of problems these technologies help you solve. Like if we consider MCP specifically, right? The fact that you can bring context from different external or internal services and make it all available right where you're operating, whether it is an IDE or it's an app, that has been the most difficult problem in the security space, especially AppSec. I can give an example, right? So let's say I'm an AppSec engineer. I receive a vulnerability report from a researcher, right? Now I'm supposed to triage that report, and it's a true positive or not. Oftentimes, this process involves me going and interacting with different systems. Let's say Jira, Confluence, Codebase, right? So there's a bunch of different systems, right? And I, as an AppSec engineer, I have to literally go to these different services. I go to Jira, I look at the ticket, I go to the code repository, I try to understand the code. These things takes time. I end up spending, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes just triaging a vulnerability when I'm not really triaging. I'm just trying to bring the context in, right? Once I bring the context in is when the actual triaging starts to happen, right? So with MCP, that space is evolving. Now I don't need to worry about, okay, how can I bring the context? It's all there. I can just ask the MCP client, right, saying that, look, I want to triage this vulnerability. I want the information from all of these different resources. And the client is smart enough because it uses LLMs. It is able to reason through my intent or my request, and it's able to grab the right context from all of these different resources. So the time to triage has now significantly reduced from, let's say, 15 minutes to a single minute, right? So when I consider sort of these efficiency gains and sort of productivity gains, I as a security industry, we should think about, okay, how can we make sure these technologies are secure, because these technologies are actually valuable, right? And the same concept applies to RAGs or reasoning models and whatnot. So I think the skepticism and people who are kind of afraid of adopting, their concerns are valid, but I think they also need to consider, okay, how can we as an industry try to solve this problem and not just oppose it all the time.
Thank you. Yeah, as a fellow practitioner, I know exactly what you mean. It's the context, right? Because the triage, remediation, well, if you spend time triaging, getting context, when are you going to ever remediate? And if you can't remediate, that's why the backlog gets higher and higher. So it can be against it, but okay, so what's the solution? Letting backlog add. So obviously it's great perspective. Marc, what do you think?
Well, I absolutely agree with the skepticism, deservedly so. At the same time, the smoke is clearing, if you like, and it seems like every time it clears a little bit, there's some new smoke, because things keep evolving. I used to say that the half-life of engineering knowledge is 5 years. Now it's more like 3 months because of AI. You have to keep up to date, because what wasn't true 3 months ago is suddenly true. So definitely I've seen myself many examples of reality, but I also have a healthy level of skepticism. So I often look for independent researchers that really, stake their reputations on these things. There's a guy, Alan Willey at Stanford, that spent a lot of time researching. He's published some cool papers. Some examples like Netflix, Spotify, and that where he's shown, the prediction accuracy, the efficiency gains, the cost reductions are very real, and they're startling. They're not a few percent; they're in the 50% plus zone over the past 3 years. And my own experience is things are evolving so quickly that it's healthy skepticism, but it's amazing what you can get done with AI and the realm of security. I think it gives us a whole new capability that we didn't have before. So I'm very bullish on it.
Okay, so you guys are both very bullish. So hopefully that bullish, and I personally, I think I lean toward that as well. So for the audience, if you are still kind of on the fence, the takeaways hopefully after this session, embrace it, maybe get a shot. But I cannot let you guys easy off like that. So let's kick up a notch. I think most of the optimal use case around here, we're not replacing humans, right? And context analysis, triaging, I think those are okay, right? I mean, let's make it more difficult, right? What about think of this beyond just AI remediation? Can AI, not today, maybe future, be trusted to make security decisions autonomously in production environments? Marc, what do you think?
Up to a point, yes, but not completely. It's still at a point where you want to trust but verify. I know that, again, the level of verification seems to be being lighter than it was because there were so many hallucinations and other concerns with the output. But it's getting better and better. So I definitely tend towards trusting the output more than not these days, but definitely check, especially at the macro workflow level. Micro workflow level is getting more and more trustworthy, where if you're just looking at the lines of code or something, unless there's something complex, you can pretty much trust it. But if you're looking at the macro decisions that are going to affect, major decisions, then you want to double check, make sure you trust what it's coming out with. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anshuman.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends the problems that you're trying to solve, right? So to give some context, so let's say you have a mission critical application that deals with customer sensitive data, right? I would absolutely not be comfortable letting AI make autonomous decisions. There absolutely has to be a human in the loop element to it, right? Now, having said that, I think for non-mission critical systems, right? Let's say it's an internal application and you're trying to automate something, right? I think it's okay to let AI make autonomous decisions on those systems and actually learn from it. So the way I think about it, it's going to be an iterative process, right? You try automating systems with basically having AI make autonomous decisions on systems that are not that important, and you learn from those mistakes. You learn what works, what does not work, what are the evals you need to have, what are the benchmarks you need to have, what models work, because not all models are going to work for all use cases, right? So those are the learnings I believe you can have from systems that are not mission critical, and then you can apply those learnings on production systems that deal with customer data. So that's the approach I tend to generally take. Is you start with really small use cases. You try to make those use cases work really well, consistent, reliable, and then you learn from them, and then you apply those learnings in other kind of use cases.
Thank you. And obviously both of you have similar views in this case, right? I mean, yeah, we don't buy any trust, right? But also, start small. And actually, I remember that a lot of my friends, colleagues, right, the ones who are leading actual enterprise Gen AI in general, if Gen AI adoption starts small, figure out use cases is also there's definitely similarity, right? broaderly Gen AI and specifically for AppSec. So very interesting. And we are at time, and hopefully today will be a good session for you all. So Anshuman, Marc, thank you very much. Really enjoyed the discussion. Hope the audience as well. Thank you, audience, for joining this crucial conversation. I'll now hand it back to Karina, who will be taking us to the next session. Stay tuned. Thank you, Anshuman and Marc.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Marc.